On this week's NESN Patriots podcast, we will discuss Rob Gronkowski's retirement and what's next now for the New England Patriots. Hello and welcome to the NESN Patriots podcast. I'm Doug Kai, joined as always by Zach Cox. Zach, how are you doing?
Doing fine, Doug. The voice isn't totally there today.
Oh, yeah.
So you guys are going to have to bear with me a little bit, but I'm excited to talk about some Gronk. I feel like this is a podcast that's been sort of a long time coming.
Yeah, I mean, last year, after the Super Bowl, Rob Gronkowski did admit that he was contemplating retirement. He wound up coming back for another season, which wound up going pretty well for him. Obviously, he wasn't as solid as a performer for the Patriots during the 2018 season, but he was able to go out on top with a Super Bowl. I would say this isn't quite to the extent of, Barry Sanders or Calvin Johnson or Jim Brown going off at, the very top of their game, but it's pretty close to that with Rob Gronkowski. As I said before, wasn't quite the same player in 2018, but he was still a very solid blocker, solid receiver, 29 years old, so early retirement. But yeah, I mean, I'm not that surprised, even though I was kind of leaning towards thinking that Gronk was probably going to come back.
Yeah, it did kind of seem like the longer this whole kind of dance went along this offseason, that the chances of him coming back and playing were continuing to kind of get higher and higher, especially because there were some reports out there that a couple weeks ago that the Patriots were kind of cautiously optimistic that Gronkowski would be back for another season. And I mean, it really hurts them, I think, that he waited as long as he did to make this decision, which we can get into in much more detail in a little bit. But I just think if you look at the kind of overall big picture of how his final season went, with where he was really kind of hampered by those injuries, for the back and ankle injuries for a lot of the season, and even though he was able to come back and be very productive in the playoffs, made those 2 huge catches against the Rams, had a couple of huge catches against the Chiefs, was a fantastic blocker against the Chargers. All 3 of those playoff games were kind of, if they weren't quite vintage Gronk, they were a lot more similar to what we had seen for most of his career than what we saw for most of this season. But that still doesn't change the fact that it was really kind of a grind for him this year. And even just from talking to him, his kind of emotional state it seemed to really take a hit this year. He just wasn't the happy-go-lucky Gronk for a lot of the year when he was really struggling to produce and to stay on the field. So I think overall it's really not surprising that he stepped away at this point. Whether he stays away is another question, because Drew Rosenhaus's agent is already coming out and saying, hey, you never know, he could come back midway through next season, which I guess is always a possibility considering he still is a relatively young guy. But yeah, the fact that he chose to step away, I think it's kind of, it was something we've expected to see for a long time now.
Yeah, that speculation that he could come back is certainly interesting, and I would say that another thing that was very interesting about this was just that Drew Rosenhaus gave Peter King kind of the timeline with Rob Gronkowski's retirement, that Bill Belichick called Drew Rosenhaus on Thursday. It's Monday right now, just when we're recording this. And he basically asked, okay, what's the status on Gronk? And then Drew Rosenhaus called Rob Gronkowski and said, hey, you've got to make up your mind pretty soon. And, I mean, from our perspective right now, last Thursday was officially a week into free agency, or maybe a week and a day.
Last Wednesday,
yeah. But now at this point, it's 2 weeks into free agency, so Patriots missed out on, Adam Humphries, missed out on Jared Cook. One thing, just as an aside there, I mean, the Patriots were offering Adam Humphries $9.5 or $10 million a year, so I don't know how much this would have changed their approach. It would have been dumb for them to go anywhere higher on Adam Humphries. It seemed like they were competitive with Jared Cook, so I really don't know if they would have wound up doing anything different in free agency. Maybe in a trade. Maybe they would have gone harder after Odell Beckham. Maybe, some sort of trade would have surfaced. But just reading between the lines here, that call that Belichick made to Drew Rosenhaus, wouldn't be surprised if he said to Drew, if Rob is even leaning towards retirement, just do it now, because there's $9 million in cap space that we need if Rob is going to retire. So if he's even leaning towards retirement, do it now. And if he changes his mind then we can kind of figure that out at a later date. But we really need that $9 million if he isn't going to come back. And I don't know that this is what happened. I'm purely speculating on this. But that seems to make some sense that the Patriots would kind of, push this forward, because to some degree, Gronkowski and Rosenhaus and everyone was kind of holding up the Patriots with this $9 million cap hit, because they were at the point where they were having to make desperation moves basically to free up salary cap space. And one of those was to convert some of Stephon Gilmore's base salary into a signing bonus, which basically ensures the fact that Gilmore will be here not only next season, but the season after that, and probably the season after that as well. And the next step would have been an extension for Tom Brady, which still could be coming down the line, but the Patriots were getting into desperation mode on how to create salary cap space. And now that Gronk is retired, they have $17 million worth of salary cap space. They can basically do whatever they want with the offseason at this point. Is it too late? That's, we'll see, basically, if the Patriots can make any moves here, whether that's a trade for someone like A.J. Green or signing Jordy Nelson or something. But this was basically at the desperation point where the Patriots needed to know if they were going to have that cap space or not.
And going off that point as well, the kind of Rob Gronkowski uncertainty factor reportedly was kind of affecting whether they were going to be able to sign some free agents. The report, I believe it was from Mike Reese over at ESPN, was that one of the reasons Jared Cook decided to go with the Saints rather than come to the Patriots was that he didn't know what his role on the team was going to be. Right. He didn't want to sign here and then end up being Rob Gronkowski's number 2 if Rob Gronkowski does in fact come back. So that was, who knows whether any of those kind of conversations happened with anybody else. But overall, just from a team building perspective, the Patriots needed to know probably a couple weeks ago, but they definitely needed to know by now whether Rob Gronkowski was planning on playing this season or not. And it sounds kind of similar to the conversation that we believe took place last offseason. It was right around this time. It was about a week or two later.
Yeah,
it was in early April when Rob Gronkowski finally dropped the we're not sure if we're retiring kind of game, and he said, I'm committing to play in this season. And we all kind of assumed, because that was right after his weird motocross press conference, and when he was kind of making a joke of the whole thing, we assumed that he got a call from Bill Belichick or somebody on the Patriots saying, hey, look, if you're gone, you're gone. But if you're here, we need you to actually be here. It sounds like some sort of similar conversation took place last week, and now Rob Gronkowski is, at least for the time being, retired from the Patriots.
And I'm curious to know if, Belichick made that call on Thursday because they were trying to still get Jared Cook at that point. It seems like Cook basically agreed with the Saints on either Wednesday or Thursday, so maybe the Patriots were trying to pull kind of an Adam Humphries last-minute move at that point. Still not official with Jared Cook, right? But Peter King said that he's almost certainly going to go to the Saints.
He won't reconsider his decision or some I can't remember the exact wording, but from the report from Peter King this morning was that Jared Cook is still going to the Saints, even though that deal has not yet been announced.
So I mean, before we get too far, well, I guess before we move on, the will Gronk come back? Won't Gronk come back? I mean, for me, it's kind of annoying, and it's funny that Patriots fans all seem relatively excited about this, and that I don't know. I mean, I guess if Gronk does want to come back in November, December, January or something, the Patriots certainly could use him. But at the same time, it would be kind of nice if the Patriots knew that, and maybe they do. Maybe there's some sort of handshake deal that if the Patriots need help in the playoffs or the Patriots are revving towards another Super Bowl, then Gronk's going to come back. But it is somewhat tough to plan for that, although the Patriots usually do like to carry some salary cap space into the season. So chances are, if Gronk did want to come back, they probably would have the cap space to do that at the time, and it would certainly cost them a lot less than the $9 million that he would have, his salary would have been this season, or I guess it was over $9 million. But it's also kind of curious to see how all of that works out. If the Patriots simply put him on, the retired, exempt list, whatever it is, then he would come back on that same $9 million salary. It would be extrapolated over the amount of games that he would be playing. The other option would be for the Patriots to cut Rob Gronkowski, and then at that point he would retire. and then they would have to sign him to a new contract. That seems a little bit more risky if he does decide he wants to come back. So we'll likely see him put on some sort of exempt list. But, time's kind of ticking on that as well, because that cap space does not become available until Gronk actually is placed on some sort of retired list.
Definitely. And I can see why Patriots fans are excited for this possibility. I think that it makes sense for them to kind of want to have. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit tiresome if it turns into a Brett Favre situation where we're kind of monitoring new developments about it every day.
Right.
But the potential of having a fully rested Rob Gronkowski for the final 3 weeks of the regular season in the playoffs or whatever it might be, that's a pretty enticing possibility, I think, especially because there's really no downside to that, I guess. It's either Rob Gronkowski comes back at the end of the season and he kind of plays with the team in the playoffs, or he doesn't, and then it's just kind of status quo and the Patriots go with whatever they have. But it is interesting that you said there might already be like a handshake agreement with this, which who knows if there is or not. But I think the fact that Drew Rosenhaus is being so open about this, the fact that Willie McGinnis, who is pretty plugged in the Patriots building,
he said this like 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
He said it wasn't. He was kind of very clear. He's like, this is my speculation. I'm not like exactly reporting anything, but you got to imagine that he had been talking to some people within the Patriots building to at least know that this was
or Gronk
or Gronk himself, that this would be kind of a possibility, something that Rob Gronkowski would consider down the road. And I know that Rob Gronkowski wants to kind of get away from the game for a little bit, kind of relax, rest up his body, do some non-football ventures, whether it's acting or wrestling or a bunch of commercials or whatever he's going to do. But this is a guy that's played football for a living for a decade now, and even before that, football was basically kind of the most important thing in his life, or at least the kind of main focus of his life. It's easy to imagine him being away from the game for a couple months after you get through training camp, don't have to do the whole kind of the off-season grind, him being like, I really want to come play with these guys that are still there. I want to get back out there with Tom and Julian and all these guys and try to win another Super Bowl. So I can definitely see him kind of going down that route. It's going to be something that we're going to have to talk about a lot over the next 6 months, which is going to be a little bit obnoxious, but who knows? I mean,
the only way for him to handle that situation, you can't just say like, hey guys, I'm not going to play until November. You have to retire at that point.
Yes.
And then as almost like a formality to free up the salary cap space, to get that opportunity to only play for half the season.
I think that's when you said you don't know how Patriots fans would feel, that's something that would anger Patriots fans. If he's like, hey, I'm just going to sit out and wait for a little while. Yeah. But if it's something,
I'll hold out. Or
if it turns into I'm making a glorious comeback to help my old teammates and everything, then I think that's kind of a win-win for everybody.
The one thing to consider, and I was talking to a former player about this yesterday, is that if Gronk does decide to come back in November or December, I mean, how is his body going to hold up at that point? Because at that point, he won't have gone through OTAs, minicamp, training camp, won't have played any games. So then he's got to practice and then just immediately be thrust into game situations. And this is a guy who already has had severe injury situations throughout his entire career. So, and I guess at that point, the Patriots wouldn't be banking on him really doing much. It would be kind of just an added bonus to whatever they already had on their team. It's kind of a similar situation to if Josh Gordon comes back at any point this season, where either one of those guys could just be kind of an added bonus to what they already have. But you do have to wonder how Gronk's body would hold up after not playing football for what would be, 10 months or something at that point.
And you do have to imagine that while he's probably going to continue to stay in shape and whatnot. I know he says he wants to kind of work in some sort of fitness brand, kind of make his own fitness brand after he retires. You got to imagine that he's not going to be working out with quite the same vigor that he has been as a professional football player. So yeah, that's definitely going to be something to keep in mind and with these kind of potential Gronk comeback talks.
Let's talk about what he could do now that he's retired in a little bit. So if I forget, because I have weird dad brain where I just forget everything in the world at this point. let's talk about some other options the Patriots could add at this point, because we're not only talking about tight ends, we're talking about wide receivers at this point as well, because currently the Patriots' number 2 receiver is Philip Dorsett, and their number 3 receiver is Bruce Ellington, and that is bad.
Extremely thin at both of the, or running back is okay right now, but yeah, wide receiver and tight end are both dangerously thin, I would say, right now.
So free agents right now, the most appealing free agent wide receiver is Jordy Nelson by a pretty big long shot. Number 2 on this list that Evan Silva, Roto World, put together is Michael Crabtree, who, as I think Tommy Curran put it this offseason, has hands like feet, which is really accurate if you look at Michael Crabtree's drop rate throughout his entire career. Other guys out there, Chris Hogan, Rashard Matthews, Dontrell Inman is taking a visit with the Lions, Mike Wallace, Pierre Garcon, Aldrick Robinson. I mean, if they sign Jordy Nelson, I don't want to say that would fix everything by any means, but it would be a big step for the Patriots to have a guy like Jordy Nelson in the offense. He's not the same player that he was with the Packers. He's going to be, 34 years old this season. But at least then you've got a solid number 2 receiver behind Julian Edelman who can play a variety of different spots at that wide receiver position. And the other one that everyone keeps mentioning is A.J. Green. Now at least the Patriots have the salary cap room if they did want to make a trade like that. But that all depends on the Bengals if they're even willing to part with A.J. Green.
Yeah. Go into that for a second. Where did this A.J. Green thing start? I mean, it's been mentioned for a couple weeks now that A.J. Green is a trade option for the Patriots. We've never seen any kind of concrete report or even vague report that A.J. Green would be available. Whether the Bengals would be willing to trade a guy who's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. So,
I think it's all him being on the last year of his deal, being on a team that's probably not going to do crap in the 2018 or the 2019 season. So I think that's probably where it comes from. But there's been no concrete report that nothing even like Jay Glazer, who's like floated out there that Odell Beckham could be traded. Mm-hmm. I think that it's just like, plugging pieces together that, maybe this is a guy. Because I looked through every NFL roster today to find potential trade pieces. There's not a lot out there as far as guys who would actually help the Patriots. Maybe if the Falcons and Julio Jones can't reach some sort of extension, maybe that's a possibility. Maybe they could trade for Mohamed Sanu, maybe Sterling Shepard. But, there's not really a lot of incentive for any of these teams to actually trade any of those guys. One other trade possibility before we get into the draft, and actually just going through free agent tight ends, Austin Seferian-Jenkins, I think, would be, a decent addition. Someone like Max Williams, who maybe hasn't reached his full potential yet, former, first-round pick by the Ravens, 2015, is one of the Buccaneers tight ends if they wanted to trade either Cameron Brate or O.J. Howard. Either one of those guys seems like they would be a pretty decent fit with the Patriots. And if you can sign Jordy Nelson and then trade for one of those Bucs tight ends, you're in much better shape than you would have been entering the draft. But it's just a really risky proposition entering the draft with major needs at wide receiver and tight end, because some other team might take the guy that you want, or maybe the guys that you want aren't available when you're picking. Maybe you can't trade up. It's just a really risky proposition to go into the draft saying we need a tight end, and we need a wide receiver, and we need them to start right now.
I also think it's a lot more difficult to trade up for one of those guys when any potential trade partner knows that you can't possibly enter the season without one of these kind of players. That's definitely going to kind of up the compensation for that a bit. Now, there are a lot of intriguing tight ends, a lot of intriguing wide receivers in this year's draft. I think it's a good year to need either of those positions, especially tight end. But as we talked about a lot after the NFL scouting combine, both of the top 2 tight ends, the 2 guys from Iowa, Noah Fant and T.J. Hawkinson, both very likely to be gone by number 32. The Patriots almost certainly would have to trade up for one of those 2 tight ends. And I've even seen some mock drafts where Irv Smith from Alabama, who's kind of the consensus number 3 guy on the board right now, some guys even have him going in the first round as well. So this is going to be a position and that the Patriots might have to use some kind of extra draft capital to move up if they do like one of those kind of top candidates there. Fortunately for them, they have a lot of draft capital this year. They have 6 picks in the first 3 rounds, 12 picks overall. So they do have a lot of wiggle room with which to kind of use to kind of move up and down the board however they see fit to identify somebody that they do want in there. But it's a real dire need for this team right now, and if they don't get, even if they do get someone like Austin Seferi and Jenkins, I think that this is still probably, if not the number one need on the team, it's very, very high up there right now.
Yeah, I wrote an article this morning actually about Fant and Hawkinson. I looked through 13 mock drafts, and Hawkinson's average draft position was 13th overall. He was mocked as high as 8th overall. Fant's was 21st overall. There was one mock, I think it was Mel Kiper's, it was a little bit old, where he wasn't even in the first round. So his average draft position is 21st, and the highest that he was taken in any of these mocks was 7th overall. So I just wanted to look at the trade value chart to see how much the Patriots would have to package to move up to either 13th or 21st overall. To move up to 13th, they would have to give up their 32nd overall pick, one of their second round picks, the 56th overall pick, and one of their third round picks, the 73rd overall pick. That seems like a lot, but if they did that, they would still be left with then the 13th overall pick to take TJ Hawkinson, 64th overall pick, which is their own second round pick, and 2 third round picks, 97 overall and 101 overall. And I mean, yeah, it's a lot to give up, a first, a second, and a third, but when you've still got a first, a second, and 2 third round picks, it's not as bad as it might seem in other years. To move it to 21 overall, they would package their 32nd and 73rd overall picks. That's a lot, but it's really not that much when you have so much other draft capital. And I even said that number 21 overall is actually owned by the Seahawks right now, who don't seem to like drafting in the first round. So the Patriots could even package 56 overall, 64 overall, and 73 overall to move up to 21 with the Seahawks. Now, that's to say that Fant would still be available there, but that would even leave the Patriots with 2 first-round picks, so they could address a tight end need and a defensive need, and then come back in the second round or in the third round and take some wide receivers. But I mean, options do exist there. I think that the most likely tight end that they could take would be Irv Smith, and after Irv Smith, then you're talking about Jace Sternberger. Who's the Stanford tight end? Caden Smith.
Caden Smith tested very poorly at the combine.
Yeah, 4.9, 240.
This guy Caleb Wilson from
UCLA,
from
not much of a blocker.
Yeah.
Actually, tight ends I like more than any of those middle round options are 2 late round guys. Texas State's Keenan Brown and Kentucky's C.J. Conrad. Both those guys actually graded really well on Pro Football Focus's 2019 draft guide this year. Keenan Brown was one of the best blockers in the draft. He was a transfer to Texas State. I forgot where he came from. And C.J. Conrad was just another guy who graded pretty well overall. Those are kind of 2 late round complete tight end picks. But you can't wait until the 7th round to say, okay, well, we've got Ryan Izzo, Steven Anderson, Matt Lacoste, Jacob Hollister, and Keenan Brown, and we'll figure out a tight end. You've got to do something else there.
Yeah, you need somebody that you can expect to contribute immediately if you're going to be kind of relying on the draft to kind of fill this need at tight end. Because looking at the Patriots' depth chart at tight end right now, it's hilariously thin. I mean, the 4 guys that are currently under contract that you just mentioned, Jacob Hollister, Steven Anderson, Ryan Izzo, and Matt Lacoste, they're combined for 71 career receptions, 3 career touchdowns. Ryan Izzo has never played in the NFL before. Steven Anderson didn't play a single game last season. Matt Lacoste has been kind of a depth option at his previous stops, and Jacob Hollister can't stay healthy. So it's really it's a group that absolutely needs that. I mean, this group, Dwayne Allen would be easily the number 1 player on this tight end group right now. Any veteran tight end basically that they bring in is going to immediately vault to kind of the top of that list. So this is it's as we've mentioned before plenty of times, it's a real dire need for this team right now.
All 4 of those tight ends are guys who, if they're your number 3 tight end, then you're like, ooh, maybe that guy could do something. Maybe that's gonna be the secret weapon or whatever. But if they're your number 1 or number 2, then you're like, I don't know about this Matt Lacoste guy all of a sudden.
Steven Anderson's secret weapon. I still stand by it.
I even have high hopes for Ryan Izzo. I mean, Ryan Izzo was a 7th round pick though last year. He was their last draft pick?
He was their final pick. Yeah.
He was like 255 or something like that overall. So yeah, certainly not ideal. As far as wide receivers go in the draft, like I said, these positions basically have to be tied together because you need both, and Tom Brady simply needs pass catchers on the roster. Some of those guys who are first-round pick types. DK Metcalf out of Ole Miss. Seems like he could be gone there. Maybe not the greatest fit for the Patriots anyway.
I wouldn't say so, no.
Oklahoma's Marquise Brown, another one who's not Hollywood Brown, I guess is how he's better known. Another guy who might not be the best fit. He's like 160 pounds, something like that. But once you get into the second round or late in the first round, A.J. Brown out of Ole Miss, I think is a really good fit for them. And is it Keneal?
Is it
N'Keal?
N'Keal, I believe.
N'Keal Harry. I think I've had like dyslexia every time I've read his name because I was thrown off by N'Keal Harry out of Arizona State. Another decent fit there. Deebo Samuel. He's kind of a Patriots fan favorite out of South Carolina. I like Paris Campbell out of Ohio State. He could wind up being a first-round pick. Hakeem Butler, I've seen comps to Kenny Britt for Hakeem Butler, maybe a better Kenny Britt. But there's, and then you get into Andy Isabella, who's a guy that we've talked about a lot. David Sills is a guy that we've talked about a lot. There's a lot of decent wide receiver options in kind of the late first round, early second round. Patriots have never taken a wide receiver in the first round as long as Bill Belichick has been with the team. But they've taken 2 tight ends with first-round picks in Daniel Graham and Ben Watson. And one more thing on tight ends, just kind of a rant that I have. I think a lot of people assume that the Patriots would have to take a complete tight end with a first-round pick. Ben Watson wasn't so much of a complete tight end when he was with the Patriots. He was kind of an undersized guy. He was a little bit more of a receiving option than he was a big blocking tight end. He certainly made it work as a blocking tight end, but as far as Daniel Graham goes, he wasn't that great of a receiver. So, I mean, if there was a guy like Noah Fant there who might not be known as the best blocking tight end, I think they still would be willing to take a guy like that in the first round.
I think that's a really good point. I don't think the Patriots need to get someone they think can be the next Rob Gronkowski. Because for one, there probably is no next Rob Gronkowski, and trying to replace a guy with someone of lesser talent there might not end up even being kind of the best course of action. And just the way we've seen the Patriots kind of reinvent their offense 5 or 6 times really over the course of Bill Belichick's tenure, over the course of this whole dynasty here, they could go kind of that route, whether it's get a guy that's a better blocker or a better receiver and just kind of mold the rest of their offense to kind of fit that skill set now that they don't have someone like Rob Gronkowski who can kind of fill both of those needs really better than probably anybody in NFL history. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they kind of reshape everything in the post Rob Gronkowski world.
Let's talk a little bit about what Gronk could do at this point now that he is retired. There was a Bovada email that I got about the odds for his next career path, and it was basically WWE, acting, NFL commentating. I just have trouble seeing Gronk doing any of these things really. I don't want to be mean to Gronk, but there were times, at least when he's talking to reporters, where he's not the. I mean, as I'm sitting here struggling to come up with words, he's not the most verbose guy. He doesn't. I feel like he might struggle in a commentating situation. Yeah. Maybe he could be the next Terry Bradshaw, be kind of that goofy guy in a pregame show.
It doesn't really seem like that. I mean, who knows what he actually wants, but from the outside, it doesn't seem like that's a fit for Rob Gronkowski.
Right. He might almost be forced into it because they would be willing to pay him so much money.
True. I could see him making guest appearances pretty frequently, but I can't see him being the guy who kind of wants to sit on the pregame show every day and have kind of hardcore football talk. I mean, he is a very smart football player. His kind of football IQ is underrated, but I just think that
and maybe he'd surprise me.
Maybe, yeah. But I think his kind of path is something more entertainment-based, kind of outside of football. I think he's going to be all over the place. I think that you're going to see a lot of Rob Gronkowski in just kind of the general media, whether it's in commercials. I'm sure he'll be asked to host a couple of award shows. Right. I'd be willing to bet good money that him and his brothers are going to get some sort of reality show at some point. Right. And I'm sure he'll make some WWE guest appearances at least. But I think, I don't know, it's going to be kind of interesting because I think Rob Gronkowski is very, very good at being Rob Gronkowski.
Right.
But I can't see him really being anything other than Rob Gronkowski.
That's the thing, is that even as a wrestler, I mean,
you're more kind of well versed in the WWE world than I am. But
even like, he's just so goofy. Is that like? I don't think he could really necessarily be like a Brock Lesnar type because his whole persona is just being this big goofball. And I don't know if that would really work so much as a wrestler unless they really catered the character to Gronk. And like, I think he certainly will make WWE appearances. I'm just not sure if he could be, a full-timer in that regard. One thing, I did TV last night with Jermaine Wiggins. Jermaine Wiggins actually came up with a good comp for Gronk would be Shaq. I think that Gronk could kind of be the NFL's version of Shaq.
I can see that.
Wiggy was saying that, have a cameo in an Adam Sandler movie, or, even Shaq's role on TNT pregame, and even Charles Barkley's role on TNT pregame, they're kind of goofy guys. They make it fun. I could see fitting his persona into that Shaq type role. And maybe you see Gronk do some sort of like Shazam movie. And Gronk and Shaq don't have identical personalities. I think that Shaq's a little bit more of a serious guy, but they're both just so much themselves that it's hard to pigeonhole that person into anything other than them being themselves.
I think that actually is a really good comp there, because I think Rob Gronkowski is going to be very successful at just bringing the Rob Gronkowski personality to different forms of mediums. And I'm sure he will act in some movies, but that's a really good, the Shaq comparison is a really perfect. Good one, because every time you see Shaq in a movie, that's Shaq.
Right.
Even if he's playing somebody not named Shaq, he's playing Shaq.
Right.
I think, you could definitely see Rob Gronkowski just sort of being, just popping up in Adam Sandler movies, or in maybe he'll star in an action movie someday, but
right.
I don't know. I see him just, he's going to be Gronk no matter what he does.
Yeah, and honestly, I wasn't so sure about what the future would hold for Gronk, but the Shaq comp kind of makes me think that he probably will just be doing a bunch of stuff, being himself, and I even could see him eventually, if he wants to settle down or something a little bit, maybe doing a pregame show or something like that at some point. But certainly interesting. Maybe we will see him back on an NFL field in 2019, but if he does come back for a playoff run, that probably would be it for him. I can't really see him doing this again. And even then, I don't know, I lean against him coming back just because, I don't know, I don't completely know what would be in it for him at that point, unless Tom Brady really needed him, or unless he felt like he was really doing everyone a big favor by coming back. But, I mean, he retired at the top of his game. He won his 3 Super Bowls. He's the greatest tight end of all time, depending on who you ask. He'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer, and staying and coming back for a Super Bowl run isn't going to solidify that in anyone's mind.
I think he comes back. I think he does. It obviously depends on how the Patriots kind of fare without him this season. But I think if there's a dire need at tight end, and Tom Brady
get that bad call from Tom Brady, that Bruce Wayne call.
I think Tom Brady, their relationship is so strong that I think Tom Brady might be able to convince him to come back for one more run if that's what the Patriots want, and that's what Tom Brady wants. So it's going to be
Patriots have a lot to do. I think that's the big message from this podcast, is that Patriots have a lot of work to get done before the season starts, because their wide receiver and tight end situation is really horrible right now. It's like it's almost unbelievable how bad it is. And they need to make a trade, they need to make a couple signings, and they really need to make this draft count. Otherwise, Tom Brady's going to have a hell of a time throwing to Bruce Ellington and Maurice Harris next year.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up here, what's your kind of, when you look back, what's your number one kind of Gronk memory?
I think it's mostly him just kind of reaching over 3 defenders to make catches. But the other thing that was really amazing about Gronk was kind of just his catch radius, because he would make those shoestring catches look so easy for a guy who's 6'6", 265 pounds, and that made him more special than most tight ends who are that size, because most of the time a quarterback basically just has to throw it up to a tight end like that, and that does sort of limit what a quarterback can do. But Tom Brady didn't only have to make those risky high throws to Gronk. He could make throws where Gronk was catching it by his knees or by his ankles or by his toes. And I think that's something that sort of gets a little bit overlooked with Rob Gronkowski, is that Tom Brady doesn't like making risky throws. And like I said, most tight ends who are 6'6", 265 pounds, you basically have to throw it up to them, and there's more of a risk that pass can get intercepted. And with Gronk, that certainly was not the case throughout his 9-year career.
Yeah,
for you?
Mine kind of goes along those same lines. So the first thing I thought of was that final drive in Pittsburgh in 2017, where he just I don't know if Sean Davis has recovered from that drive. Honestly, he just went right at the Steelers safety 4 plays in a row. 69 yards plus the 2-point conversion, and one of those catches in there was a shoestring catch like that. And then I remember being in the locker room after that game and talking to Dwayne Allen about Rob Gronkowski, and that's the first thing he pointed out. He said, "Did you see that catch that he made that plucked the ball off his sneakers? Like, he's 6'6". Like, I can barely reach my knees, and he's going down to kind of catch these balls right off the turf. It's something that even his teammates were just kind of blown away by. Yeah. And I think that kind of one drive, and really that game overall, but especially that one kind of sequence, just really encapsulated how he can just completely take over a game. And we didn't see that much in his final season, but that was kind of when I look back on kind of the Gronk era, there are a million moments to choose from, but that's the one that kind of sticks out in my mind.
Yeah, for sure. That was a very dominant performance there against the Steelers. But, all right, we will be back the next time something big happens. Probably won't be quite as big as, a top 3-4 player in franchise history retiring. But, for the sake of Patriots fans, I hope the Patriots do something soon because, and for the sake of Tom Brady, I hope the Patriots do something soon. Otherwise, it's going to be a very interesting 2019 season. But we will be back. Keep it on NESN.com for all of your Patriots coverage. Follow me on Twitter at Doug Codd. Follow Zach on Twitter at ZachCoxNESN.